Going in three, two, one.
Good day. Today we are on Sekou Radio, and we have a great guest today. His name is Tim Selden. He's an M.E. and A.M. Tim is the president of the Montessori Foundation and chair of the International Montessori Council. He is a co-founder of the Center for Guided Montessori Studies and co-director of its Montessori School Leadership Certification Program. His more than 40 years of experience in Montessori educational include 22 years of headmaster at the Barry School of Silver Spring, Maryland, which was his alma mater from age 2 to his high school graduation. Tim was the co-founder and director of the Institute for Advanced Montessori Studies, the Center for Guided Montessori Studies, and currently also serve as the head of the Newgate School in Sarasota, Florida. He earned a BA in History and Philosophy from Georgetown University, an MED and Education Administration in Supervising from American University, and he has a Montessori certification from the American Montessori Society. Tim Selden is the author of the several books on Montessori education, including his latest How to Raise an Amazing Child, The Montessori Way, with Dr. Paul Epstein, Building a World-Class Montessori School, Finding the Perfect Match, Recruit and Retain Your Ideal Enrollment, Master Teacher Model Program, Starting a New Montessori School, Celebration of Life, and the World in the Palm of Her Hands. Tim, your resume is unbelievable. Can you tell us a little bit how you got into Montessori system? Because I know my children went to Montessori school, the Center for Education in Bradenton. Let's talk about this massive background you have. Just elaborate on this a little bit.
Well, I don't know that my background is massive. I think what is important is that Montessori represents a real revolution, a totally different way of thinking about childhood, about schools, and about what's the fundamental purpose of education and how can we best facilitate the development of the unique genius of every child. That, I think, is important. It's a worldwide movement. It's celebrating 113 years of work around the world. We have more than 22,000 Montessori schools that we know of, and we see it practiced today in at least 115 countries, as diverse as the United States and Russia and Ukraine and France and England and mainland China, which is building 10,000 Montessori schools as we speak. Iraq, I just got back from a trip to Iraq just in October, where in the Kurdistani semi-autonomous province, the government is working together with private investors to develop a model Montessori school that will go from preschool through high school to the refugee camps of Syrian refugee women, widows, who had children, and we were able to create a teacher education program for these women in their native language, Arabic, to train them in the camps to set up schools to be formally internationally certified Montessori teachers. So what I'm proud of is this is a really serious worldwide movement that goes from very small schools like the Newgate School and the Center for Education here in the Sarasota, Florida area, up to the very largest private schools in the world, the City Montessori Schools, which is 38,000 students on 16 campuses in Lucknow, India, or the Eton Montessori schools in China, which have 30-some campuses, and they certainly don't have 38,000 children, but they probably have 14,000. So there's a lot of movement around the world, and what excites me is every school, to some extent, is being influenced by Montessori, because it was her seminal work 100-some years ago that really led to our understanding of some things that we take for granted today. The human beings are capable of amazing things. The children of color are as capable as children of European ancestry, that girls are as capable of boys, and that the most important years of education are not where we have traditionally put our attention and our money, which is upper elementary, middle school, and high school. It's those first years of life when the brain is being formed and where the stimulation that children get, whether it's from their village, from their aunts, from their parents, from their priests, rabbis, ministers, imams, everything that goes into the experience of a very young child has a profound difference for the rest of their life. And that's really the fundamental discovery of Montessori, along with the idea that children learn far better when they develop an innate passion for learning, when they aren't simply performing for grades and approval or rewards, but rather see themselves as partners with the adults in the community, in their family, in their school. And instead of competing to be the very best in the class, children will compete. They always compete. They compete in tennis. They compete in golf. They compete in soccer or football. But they don't need to compete to motivate them to learn, because they're hardwired to learn. Children are capable of amazing things, and each child is a unique human being who learns in his or her own unique way at his or her unique pace. And if teachers really understood that, they'd put the child at the center instead of the teacher and his or her curriculum. And instead of imagining that the teacher can sit there and drone on about what has to be done in a certain time period and simply dismiss those children who don't learn as quickly, if the goal was to help every child to develop a passion for whatever they're learning, whether it's the English language or French or how to play tennis or golf or how to really understand their bodies and nutrition or science, political science, economics, the more real it is and the safer they feel. And I don't mean safety to just be mean, to do anything they want, but the idea that there are ground rules that establish partnership, kindness, respect among all the different players, and they understand they have not 1 inch of freedom to do harm, but real freedom to be their own unique person, to be honest about what they enjoy, to let us know what works for them, and to negotiate with us. And we're not going to give them everything they want, but we can help them to understand how in the real world I teach karate, you learn karate. We have a relationship. And so we teach them how to voluntarily become the masters of their craft.
Well, today is a great pleasure to have here on Sekou Radio Tim Selden, who spent 40 years of experience with the Montessori system. We cannot talk about Tim and Montessori without mentioning Maria Montessori. Tim, what do you know about Maria Montessori? Can you tell us a little bit about her, how she came up with this concept of the Montessori?
I can certainly tell you secondhand. I never met her.
Right.
I knew her son. I knew her grandson. I knew her grandchildren. I've met many people who worked with her during her lifetime. The story is well known. She's considered to be, by many different agencies, one of the 100 most important and influential people of the 20th century. She was a doctor. She was one of the first women to ever be allowed to attend medical school. She was top of her class. Mm-hmm. She became the head of the clinic at the University of Rome. Mm-hmm. She specialized in psychiatry, which in the early 1900s did not mean putting someone on a couch and saying, "Tell me about your mother." Mm-hmm. It was brain research. Mm-hmm. Her question was, is social Darwinism true? Social Darwinism, of course, was the belief that was common in those days that children are innately lazy except for a gifted few, that the children of families who are wealthy are successful because they have good breeding, and that the average person is just a mongrelized sort of person, and women aren't really capable. She wanted to test every one of those premises and did, and using very meticulous, scientific, controlled experiments, discovered things she never imagined she would ever discover, because she was absolutely convinced women were capable. She was absolutely convinced from every piece of evidence that she found that if you took a person whose parents were illiterate and you taught them in the right way, you could teach them anything they want to learn. Half of it is just compassion, respect, and patience. But what she did is she realized she was being blocked by the government schools. Mm-hmm. And eventually, having done lots and lots of work with adults and with very seriously neurologically damaged children with autism, children with schizophrenia, children with neurological disabilities that we would call retardation today, cognitive impairments. Mm-hmm. She was able to literally transform an asylum for 300 of these children into a place that was run largely by the children, not by the nursing staff, and where significant percentages of the children became as successful as traditional children in the normal government school exams. And she kept saying, if I can do this in just 2 years with such a damaged population, what could we do if you gave us access to children who are just the normal human beings we see in our schools in Europe or in America or anywhere? Mm-hmm. The schools blocked her. She had to wait 6 years. And finally there was a group of well-intentioned industrialists who were philanthropists who wanted to build a better society. They brought in homeless people. They trained them to work in factories. They set up model housing for them. They were really trying to do something good. But the children who were too young to go to the Italian public schools were running amok in the community, throwing rocks through windows, urinating in the hallways, writing on the walls. And so these people said, let's create a place to hold these children, to keep them off the streets. And because in those days there was no antibiotics, the biggest danger was infection, disease. They needed a doctor. And they said to Dr. Montessori, will you be the medical director? And she says, yes, if you let me actually control what we do with these children to see if we can actually teach them something. And what she did with these children, 60 of them, between the age of 2 and 7, within 6 months it was called the Miracle of Rome. Right. They were reading, they were writing, they were learning geometry, they were doing things that people could not imagine. And they replicated it in place after place, in orphanages, in the royal house of the Tsar of Russia, in the British Embassy for the International Community of Rome. Mm-hmm. They did it all over the world. People came from everywhere to understand what was this thing she was doing, and how is it possible that these children from such a impoverished background could be doing so much better by any reasonable standard compared to the unruly, unhappy children in the government schools. And the answer was very simple. She was teaching them how to run their own house.